Hey what's up friends, this Naruto fanfiction. What if Naruto was fall in love with FemShinra movie? 10-year-old Naruto Uzumaki could barely move, his glazed eyes looking up to the small source of light that shined down on him. He was lying on the cold jagged ground of an underground cavern, thrown down here by a mob that had been trying to kill him since early this evening. It had started off like any normal day. He ate his ramen, went to the academy, failed his graduation exam, and then got chased off the academy grounds by a mob that wished to kill the demon. After they managed to catch him, they dragged him into the forest of death where they beat, stabbed, kicked and basically abused him till he lost consciousness. He awoke in time to watch them throw him off a cliff into this deep cavern before going off to celebrate the demon's death. A normal person wouldn't have survived this, but he wasn't a normal person. He may have acted like an idiot, but he knew about his burden. He had known about the fox for 5 years now. He met him when his other teacher Mizuki stabbed him in the skull on his 5th birthday. He met the fox, cussed him out, and learned he was the truth of what the fourth did. But enough about reminiscing and back to the story. As he lay on the ground he noticed the sound of footsteps. Had the mob come down here to make sure he was dead? From a corner of the cavern came a brown-haired girl. She was dressed in a strange light blue bodysuit with white lining. She had 2 strange weapons in holsters on her belt and strange glowing eyes. She was moving slowly, observing him as she came closer, trying to judge if he was a threat or not. "You're alive?" she asked, her voice strangely monotone like a machine. "Hi," Naruto whispered, not able to lift his head to answer her. She knelt down beside him, her eyes looking over the various tears and bleeding areas of his body. "You have lost too much blood, your body will cease to function if you are not treated as soon as possible," she voiced. Naruto couldn't answer her. He was already passed out from blood loss. Carefully she hooked an arm under his legs and another under his back, lifted him up, and began carrying him further into the cavern bridal style. As she walked she noticed a strange red energy that seemed to be healing the boy's body. Interesting, rapid regeneration similar to Vincent Valentine, but not as advanced. "He will be an interesting subject," she whispered as she entered into a much larger cavern. In the center of the cavern was a huge building. On the front of it had Shinra Incorporated. Entering the building she made her way past several offices, meeting rooms, and workstations before she reached the medical wing. She quickly placed Naruto on one of the clean beds, made her way to a computer terminal and entered commands. Special robots called medical drones appeared out of nowhere and began stripping the boy, cleaning his wounds and bandaging them. One of the drones took a blood sample and went to get an IV for a blood transfusion. In order to ensure he'd live, a computer screen lit up. On it, the face of a beautiful red-haired woman with golden eyes and pale skin appeared. "What did you find?" the woman asked. "A young boy, badly injured and near death. He has unusual regeneration abilities similar to that of Vincent Valentine. I believe he will be of use to us," the girl answered, not bothering to look at the screen. "Shulky," the woman voiced, getting the girl's attention. "Do not let him die. I have a feeling he will be very special to our cause," she ordered. "I understand. I will be in Mako treatment as soon as the transfusions are completed," Shulky replied. A beeping on another screen got her attention. It was the drone who had taken the blood sample earlier. "Interesting," Shulky whispered. "What is it, Shulky? Is there a problem?" the woman asked. "Yes, currently the only blood supply we have in our inventory that matches the boy is that of the first class all-lighter Genesis, but the blood is unstable and will cause the boy's body to degenerate over time," Shulky reported. "Give it to him anyway. We shall enhance his healing abilities to cancel out the degeneration with Mako treatment. I want him ready for training as soon as possible. Once you finish the transfer you may begin your own Mako treatment," she ordered before the screen went black. "Understood," she whispered as 3 medical drones entered the room, carrying 4 blood bags for the transfusion. Moving slowly, Shulky hung the IV bags and inserted a needle into the boy's arms, allowing the blood to slowly travel into his body. Hours seemed to pass by before all 4 bags were empty. Carefully she removed the needles, lifted him up, and carried him to an empty Mako chamber. Placing him inside she fitted him with an oxygen mask, closed the door and locked it. Activating a nearby terminal she began giving commands. "Begin Mako transfer, start at 1000 units, and increase to 1500 after 5 hours," she voiced. "Understood," the computer answered. As she walked away the chamber Naruto was in flooded with a strange green glowing energy. It continued until the entire chamber was full, and he sank beneath it. Entering her own chamber Shulky closed her eyes as the energy flooded her chamber. "Genesis blood, how interesting will you become?" "Konoha Hokage Tower. So Naruto is missing?" Saratobi asked. "Correct, Lord Hokage. He failed his graduation test earlier today and ran off before I could talk with him. He hasn't been seen since," Iruka voiced. "How did he fail again?" "I gave you instructions to pass him since his grades were being altered by the other teachers and principal," Saratobi replied. "I had no choice to fail him. He couldn't perform his clone jutsu and Mizuki insisted he take his exam in front of the entire class. If I had passed him, the other students would have cried favoritism." Iruka sighed. "Mizuki, I should have known." Luckily he was arrested later today for trying to steal the forbidden scroll, Sarutobi voiced. I believe you should begin searching for him as quickly as possible. He's distraught and may do anything now that he can no longer be a ninja of Konoha. If the council gets wind of this, they will do everything to make the rest of his life a living hell, and I refuse to let that happen, Iruka voiced, his tone showing he was serious. Agreed. They'll also send for Jiraiya and convince him to take Naruto as a student. The council would not allow any other shinobi to teach him anyway, Sarutobi sighed. So for the next 3 days Anbu searched high and low for the blonde-haired boy, but found nothing. The third was forced to declare him a civilian runaway, but denied the civilian council motion to send out Hunter Ninja to hunt the boy down. Naruto's former class all got paired up in groups of 3 and got their teachers. None of them knew that 2 miles below the surface of Konoha Naruto slept in a Mako chamber, the Kyuubi making alterations to his vessel's body with help of the new blood coursing through his veins. Shulky was awoken by the loudest scream she had ever heard. It was coming from the boy. He was screamed in his sleep and clutching his head so tightly that his fingernails were digging into his skull. She ran to the computer terminal and began scanning, trying to find what the problem was. Shulky report: the red-haired woman appeared on a screen. Something has happened to the subject. According to the scans, his DNA is starting to be rewritten by a strange red energy from inside his body. The Mako doesn't seem to affect it and is being pushed back. The red energy has somehow formed a barrier around his body and is altering his genes at an accelerating rate, Shulky reported. Is there a danger the subject will be lost? The woman asked. Her voice seemed to have a slightly worried tone that Shulky had never heard before. There is a 60% chance the subject will be lost, however. With his increased healing factor that percent is lowered to 40%. Should I cease the Mako transfer? Shulky asked. No, continue, by decrease the value to 500 units. Perhaps the transfer rate was too high, and that is what's causing this, the woman answered. Obeying her command, Shulky lowered the transfer rate down to 500 units. The boy's screams continued, but them seemed to lessen a bit as the red energy decreased. For several hours Shulky watched as the boy's body changed. Blonde hair turned red, skin lightened, his body began to grow slightly, increasing by 4 inches. His blood pressure and heart rate is decreasing and returning to normal values. The red energy has finally dissipated, Shulky reported after 6 hours of enduring Naruto's screaming. The Mako transfer. The woman spoke. The boy's body is no longer rejecting it, but I have increased the transfer rate to 700 units per hour. So far there aren't any negative changes, Shulky replied. Good, keep it up and report in when the transfer is completed. In the meantime search for something for the boy to wear. I don't think he'll respond well to being naked in front of you, the woman spoke. Missing the slight blush that came across Shulky's face. Understood, she voiced as the screen went black. Shulky left the room, leaving a drone to watch over the blonde as she made her way to a storeroom where equipment and clothing was stored. As she searched through the various jumpsuits, jackets, and such, she came across a red leather coat with black shoulder guards. Nodding to herself, she folded it up and placed it in a pile. Adding to it a black Kevlar vest, black leather pants and red leather gloves, she picked up the pile and began to leave when something happened. Warning. Warning. Subject 23740 has broken containment cell. I repeat, subject 23740 has broken containment cell. Shulky report to Medical Lab 1. Channeling Mako to her legs, Shulky sprinted down the hall towards Medical Lab 1. As she reached the outside door, it burst open, a medical drone flying though it and slamming into the opposite wall. Moving the clothes to her right hand, she pulled out one of her energy lances and poked her head inside the door. The door to Naruto's Mako chamber had been forced open. Green fluid was all over the floor. Several guard drones and medical drones were in pieces, and in the corner of the room the medic and guard drones had cornered the former blonde. He was standing in a fighting stance she had never seen before, his right arm in front of him in a guard stance with his left arm pulled back, and it seemed to be gathering energy. One of the guard drones stepped forward to restrain him when he responded. Out of my way. His left hand lit up with strange blue energy which he slammed into the head of the drone, knocking it clear across the room and into a terminal. He noticed all the other drones back away, as if afraid to challenge him after what just happened. It was then Naruto noticed the girl standing in the doorway with a strange weapon in her hand. His eyes narrowed a bit before turning back to the drones. Leave me alone or face the fate of your friend, he voiced. As if understanding him, they quickly turned and headed back to their places in the lab. Seeing them returning, he turned his attention to the girl that had now entered the room, her weapon still in front of her to defend herself. Why have you broken out of your chamber? Your Mako treatment has not been completed, she voiced, keeping her eyes locked with his and trying to ignore the fact he was completely naked. I wanted to know what's going on and what you're doing to me. I don't like being kept in the darker secrets, Naruto voiced. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, so what's your name? he asked politely. Lowering her weapon she relaxed now that he was no longer acting as a threat. Shulky Rui, she answered as she put away her weapon and moved over to a terminal. Placing down the pile of clothes she activated the terminal and pulled up the status of his Mako chamber. Your Mako treatment is only 40% completed. You need to finish the transfer or your body will begin to shut down, she voiced as she turned from the terminal and made her way back to Naruto, still making sure her eyes didn't wander too low. Are you going to explain everything to me once I finish? Naruto questioned. Yes, if I do not explain you the process, then you may do something that would severely damage yourself or kill yourself. I assure you all will be explained once the treatment is finished, she explained. Naruto nodded, entered another Mako chamber, and allowed himself to be locked in. These clothes are for you once you're finished. Please wait here in the lab until I return for you, Shulky voiced as she activated the Mako transfer and slowly left the room. Naruto closed his eyes and relaxed, allowing the Mako to flow into his body. Shulky Kinda cute wasn't she, Kyuubi? But she was Kit, make sure to tease her when you speak again. Count on it. Shulky had left the lab and made her way to her private room. Closing the door she rested against it and slid down to the floor, her face bright red. He was so she whispered. I know, I was impressed too, the red-haired woman voiced from a screen. Shulky turned to the screen, slight embarrassed to be seen like this. I'm sorry mom, I just don't understand these feelings, and she was cut off. I understand, Shulky. I believe you are experiencing emotions long since denied to you due to years of Mako injections. In my opinion, you should embrace these feelings. Perhaps get further in touch with your lost humanity, she voiced. The screen went blank, leaving Shulky alone with her thoughts. Research? I must research this, she voiced as she got to her feet and made her way to her private computer. A few hours later his Mako treatment was complete. The lock disengaged and allowed Naruto to leave the chamber. He took little time stepping up to a mirror and checking out the changes to his body. He liked the changes. The hair was cool, the muscles were developed, the glowing blue eyes were exotic looking. He looked like something out of a video game, go figure. He found the outfit Shulky had left for him next to the terminal and proceeded with getting dressed. The vest was little snug and the pants were a little loose, but the jacket was perfect. Stepping away from the mirror he began looking around the medical lab, trying to find something to do. I wonder where Shulky is? He asked out loud. Rui is currently located in her private room. The computerized voice answered. Deciding the computer was voice activated, he decided to try his luck. Can you tell me how to get there? He asked. Exit Medic Lab 1, turn left and walk to the end of the hall, turn right and second door on left, the computer answered. Thanks, he smiled as he left the lab, not noticing he was being watched through all the cameras. Shinra CEO office. A beautiful red-haired woman with glowing Mako eyes watched as Naruto made his way down the hall. She smirked as she reached for file on her desk and opened it. Project Genesis has been reported to be a complete failure due to clones being highly unstable and uncontrollable after a period of 6 years, the source of the malfunction being the slow degeneration of the Genova cells. All efforts to improve the body's healing functions were a failure, she read before turning back to the screens. Perhaps you can prove them all wrong, Naruto Uzumaki, she smiled. Shinra Corridor 2. Naruto reached the room the computer said was Shulky's. He knocked slightly and waited for a response, but none came. Turning the knob he found it to be unlocked, pushed it open, slide and peeked in. The desk light was on, but everything else in the room was off. The small light lit up a certain figure lying on the bed with the covers pulled up. It was Shulky, and she appeared to be sleeping. Opening the door more, the light from the hallway reached her head and made her wince in her sleep. She turned over to get away from the light, and that's when Naruto noticed her bare back. Holy crap, she's naked. I shouldn't be doing this, I am not a pervert. He screamed in his head. Carefully he closed the door and headed back to the medical lab. The scene of her bare back burned into his mind. Ha. I saw it all, Kit. You better hit that soon or at least get a taste of it. The fox laughed loudly. Shut up. I don't even know her, damn it. He shouted back in his mind. Oh, you barely know her, huh? Then why don't you bare your soul to her and get to know her like the back of your hand? Ha. Shut up. I'm not listening to the evil perverted fox that makes the king of all perverts seem tame. Somewhere in Central. Achoo. Roy Mustang sneezed. Are you alright, sir? That was one hell of a sneeze, one of the soldiers voiced. I'm fine, now what was I talking about again? Roy asked. Miniskirt, sir. Sorry, I needed a little comedy in this story. Shinra Incorporated. Back in the lab, Naruto began looking through the various books for something to read. Most of them were nothing but tech manuals and research reports until he came across a small red book, Loveless, huh? He voiced as he opened it up and began reading. When the war of the beasts brings about the world's end, goddess descends from the skewings of light and dark spread, for she guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. Shinra Incorporated. Shulky's room. She awoke, she must have been researching for too long to fall asleep in the end, rather than returning to her Mako chamber. Getting up and stretching, she grabbed her jumpsuit and began putting it back on, reminding herself to get another one when she got back to the lab. She wondered if Naruto had finished his transfer session and if he was wandering the lab. She left her room heading for the lab, preparing to face him and not react like she had earlier when she saw him naked. But the door opened, revealing Naruto clad in his new outfit reading from a small red book. Infinite in mystery is the gift of the goddess who seek it thus, and take it to the sky ripples form on the waters, surface the wandering soul knows no rest. He read, not noticing Shulky entered the room. Loveless Act 1 she spoke, catching Naruto's attention. You know it? He asked, closing the book. How could I not? I read it so much it's been beaten into my head, she voiced as she came closer. I see the clothes fit well, I was sure you would like them more than a jumpsuit, she added as she moved past him to the computer. Naruto shivered, remembering the evil vile orange jumpsuit he was forced to wear. He swore he hated jumpsuits, and then the scene of Shulky out of her jumpsuit appeared. Yes, I really hate jumpsuits, but I like what they hide. He giggled inside his mind. Naruto. Shulky's voice broke him out of his musings. Sorry, what were you saying? He asked. I was going to explain to you the long and complicated process that you just endured to become what you are now, she voiced. Sounds boring. Give me the short version, he replied, getting a sigh in return. The Mako injected into your body made you stronger. Changed your genetics and made you more powerful than you would have been without it, she voiced. Cool, so what's next? He voiced as she turned away from the computer. I have been monitoring what is going on above the surface. Your leader, the Hokage, has declared you a runaway with orders to be returned to the village by force if necessary. Despite the fact you didn't become a ninja, he finds that you are far too valuable to leave the village, she explained as Naruto tightened his hands into fists. So he was going to make me a prisoner in my own village, huh? I'm even willing to beat, he told the academy teachers, to fail me on purpose, so I couldn't become a ninja and leave the village on missions, Naruto voiced. I do not know, I have very little information on such a matter, however as things stand you will not be able to enter the village for some time. Should you be spotted by any of their shinobi you would be dragged back and forced to remain inside their walls, as you cannot properly defend yourself you would be unable to fight against them, Shulky voiced as she locked eyes with Naruto. Seeing the rage in them, so what should I do? Train. He replied. Hi, with the Mako flowing through your body you must now train to utilize it and wield it through a weapon, she voiced as she turned back to the screen. I have discovered there is an event in 6 months in Konoha called the Chunin exams. Your training will need several months before being complete, but afterward you and I will enter this exam under the protection of another village, she explained. Why? Naruto questioned, confused about the girl's plan. Because my master wishes for it, she will reveal herself to you when the time is right, but for now please follow me to the training room. She turned to leave, leaving Naruto standing there. Think of the Chunin exams as a way to get back at your former village for denying you the chance to be a shinobi, she added. And so for the next 5 months Naruto trained with Shulky, his progress being recorded by the mysterious red-haired female in the CEO office. Things progressed in the Hidden Leaf village as well. Team 7 lost its third team member on their first C-ranked mission, their fallen teammate replaced with a young boy named Sai. Team Kurenai progressed smoothly except for Hinata, who was still faltering without Naruto there to give her support. Team Guy was the same as they always was. Niji was a jerk, Tenten had weapon issues, and Lee screamed about the springtime of youth. Team Asuma was pretty much the same as normal. Shikamaru was lazy, Choji still loved eating, and Ino screamed about Sasuke every 5 seconds. Sarutobi still continued to fight the council about sending Hunter Ninja after Naruto, who wasn't even a ninja, but secretly told all the Jonin that if they spotted him outside the village, they were to capture him and bring him back alive and unharmed. Naruto and Shulky stood in one of the many training rooms. They were breathing hard after spending the past 5 hours sparring, while avoiding the various gun turrets and traps in the room. Naruto was wielding a special custom-made rapier, a black hilt with silver tint, and 3 small holes which held 3 different materia, modified Genesis sword. Shulky had deactivated her laser lances, currently on one knee, while she tried to regain her breath. She was covered in sweat and sporting a bad gash on her left arm from where she got nicked by a turret. Naruto was sweaty too, but didn't have any wounds thanks to his healing factor. I guess that's all for today. You lasted much longer than you did 2 days ago, Naruto smiled as he sheathed his sword. Your observation is correct, I lasted 1 hour and 38 minutes longer than our previous spar, Shulky gasped out as she slowly got back to her feet. Making his way to her, Naruto hooked an arm around the body and helped her walk towards the exit to the medical bay. For the past 5 months she and Naruto had been training every other day, having spars that would last for hours. When they weren't training, they were both in the main computer room, where Shulky would help instruct Naruto in his studies, history, tactics, mathematics, fighting styles and various languages like Latin, Spanish, French, and Chinese. Naruto's favorite subject however was materia and its various uses. Shulky started him off with basic materia that allowed him to cast the basic elemental spells fire, blizzard, thunder, and arrow. 3 days later he had maxed them all out and requested better materia to improve his skills. Now he had 2 master materia for all the spells and sword arts in his sword. His final materia was the only summoning materia he had, the Dragon King Bahamut. While Naruto was mostly offense, Shulky was defense. Her materia allowed her to cast spells like Protect, Shell, Full Cure, Haste, Slow, and other various techniques to protect her. After 3 months of training, Naruto was finally introduced to Shulky's master, the beautiful red-haired woman. She explained that she was a cloning experiment infused with Unova cells and clones, with the DNA of the man whose blood now flowed through Naruto's veins, Genesis, and the blood of the woman that helped create Project Solider, Lucrecia Crescent. She like Shulky hadn't aged, thanks to countless Mako treatments which halted the aging process. Naruto found it hard to believe that Shulky was over 200 years old, but still looked like a 16-year-old. The woman who was asked to be called Lucrecia was only 137 years old, but still looked like he was 25. She explained that once Naruto had enough Mako treatments, his aging process would cease as well, but it won't be for several years. They weren't immortal, they just could easily be killed, and told Naruto to be wise on how much damage his body took, regardless of his healing factor. After getting Shulky patched up and both getting another Mako treatment to restore what they had lost, the two went to the CEO office to meet with Lucrecia about attending the Chunin exams in Konoha. According to data obtained by Shulky, the Chunin exams are being held in Konoha. This confirms the earlier reports we obtained months ago. The villages of Rain, Mist, Sand, and Sound will be sending teams to participate as well. Konoha will be entering 6 teams, 3 of teams being your former classmates. Naruto-kun, Lucrecia voiced as she read the file, also your former leader. Sarutobi still has a standing order to capture you and return you to the village. Since you were a runaway, she sighed. Naruto will need a new identity then to enter the village. He cannot be allowed to be captured, Shulky voiced. That worried about me, Shulky-chan. Naruto smirked, getting a blush from the brunette. You two can flirt later. I want you to go down and meet your 3rd teammate for this mission. And Naruto will be going under the code name Genesis. While at the exams, Lucrecia ordered with a smile. Genesis, huh? I like it. It'll try to make him proud. Naruto bowed and left with Shulky following behind. As soon as they were gone, Lucrecia opened a drawer in the desk and pulled out a file. Subject 871,035, Clone 72, Riku, she whispered as she looked at the picture of the silver-haired, aqua-eyed boy. He was the best out of the 100 clones that were created from the former Riku's DNA. He had all the same powers and abilities and performed the best in the entire group. He was perfect for this mission, and it would be good chance to test him outside the lab. Shinra Incorporated. 1st floor. The elevator door opened, allowing Naruto and Shulky to enter the hall. Leaning against the wall was a young teenager with shoulder-length silver hair. He was dressed in a long black coat with a silver chain around his neck. In his left hand was a strange black wing-like sword with a red materia sphere in the center of the hilt. He turned to meet them, his aqua-colored eyes locking with theirs. Good to see you, my name is Riku, number 871,035, he voiced. I see a clone from one of the later projects. I've read your evaluation reports, they are quite impressive. Shulky spoke as they shook hands. Sorry I haven't heard much about you, Riku. I was too busy training to notice such things, Naruto added as he shook his hand too. I have heard about you though, the new Project Genesis. I must say you are quite interesting compared to how your reports described you, Riku smirked. From here on our objectives are as follows, Shulky voiced, handed Riku and Naruto a pair of headbands with the word Shinra etched into them in Japanese. We are to infiltrate the Chunin exams and gather intelligence on certain individuals for research. We are also to obtain blood, hair, and skin samples from select targets and attempt to acquire the medical files of 3 genin entered into the exam by Konoha. Shulky explained, handing out 3 files to the 2 boys. Naruto opened them and went wide-eyed at their targets. Sasuke Uchiha, Niji Hyuga and Hinata Hyuga. Konoha. As you know, the Chunin exams are being held here in our village this year, and genin teams from several countries will be attending. However, there are 2 new entries this year, and I advise all of you to be on guard, Sarutobi voiced. Who is coming, Lord Hokage? Iruka asked as the jonin quieted down to listen. The first is the newly created Sound Village. They're only sending 1 team, but we have no idea what they are capable of. The second is a team being sponsored by the company Shinra Incorporated, Sarutobi voiced, making everyone go wide-eyed. Pardon me, Lord Hokage, but isn't Shinra Incorporated? Kakashi got cut off. Indeed. They are the ones that developed the metal the 4th Hokage used to create his legendary kunai. It is unclear why they have a team, or why they have waited so long to send one, or why they did not ask Konoha to sponsor their team. However, we can be assured that their team is skilled, powerful and not to be taken lightly. All of you should warn your students not to engage the Shinra shinobi unless they have no choice, Sarutobi ordered, and the jonin fled the room to report. Turning to Iruka he decided to ask, what of the search for Naruto? Has any new leads come forth? He spoke, no Lord Hokage, it seems Naruto has vanished completely, though Master Jiraiya did mention a group called the Akatsuki that have been going around gathering intel of demon vessels, it is possible they have Naruto. Iruka replied. None of this was supposed to happen, Naruto was supposed to become a shinobi and be focused on becoming the Hokage so he would be loyal to the village, it's bastards like the council that keep interfering in my and Minato's plan. Sarutobi cursed, what of Kushina sir? Iruka asked, thankfully she is not aware of the situation yet, but that may change soon if Naruto is not found, she has a thing of showing up when she's not expected, and I got a report that she lost her Anbu to tail in the Land of Iron 3 days ago. He sighed. May Kami have mercy on us if Kushina Uzumaki, Konoha's Red Death finds out about this. Iruka whispered. Konoha was bursting with activity unlike any other day, today was the day of the start of the Chunin exams, and the streets were flowing with people, merchants, and shinobi from other nations. Currently Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Sai were standing outside of the Shinobi Academy getting ready to enter. Sasuke was being a smug bastard like always while Sakura looked across between excited and worried. As for Sai, he had that fake smile on his face again, but inside his mind, he was thinking about the mission Lord Danzo had given him. You are to participate in the Chunin exams and learn all you can about the team Shinra has sent. I will look forward to your report at the end of the second exam, also you are to ensure Sasuke makes it to the finals, do not fail. If he hadn't learned to have complete control of his emotions, Sai would have looked worried, he had heard tales of Shinra and how they were ruthless and had advanced technology that made anything the elemental nations had look like the Stone Age, all he had were the names of the three competing, Shulki, Riku and Genesis, ages unknown, skills unknown, threat level unknown. He really hoped he came out of this alive. They entered the academy, bypassing the two Chunin that were trying to eliminate those not worthy of attending the Chunin exam. They nodded to Kakashi, who was waiting for them with a smile hidden behind his mask. Kakashi-sensei, any sign of the Shinra team? Sakura asked, yes, they are currently heading this way, be on your guard he ordered and poofed away, allowing them to enter. Sasuke-kun you should try to lay low, you can't afford to be targeted, Sakura voiced in concern, shut up Sakura, no one can beat an Uchiha, not even these Shinra shinobi. Sasuke replied in his usual superior tone, she sighed in her head. Ever since Johan had been killed on the mission to Wave Country and Zabuza escaped, Sasuke had been acting like such a bastard, her love for him had faded rapidly due to his attitude that Kakashi only seemed to encourage during training. Her friend Ino saw this too, coming to her friend and rival's aid. She saw Sasuke as a bastard and didn't really have any feelings for him anymore. Her mother still encouraged her to get close to the boy, she got smacked when she refused and threatened to get kicked out of the house and have her shinobi license revoked by the council. Other than Hinata and Tenten, most of the female genin in the shinobi program were encouraged to try and woo Sasuke in order to get the fame and power of his family. Those who didn't were either from powerful clans like the Hyuga or were just orphans that the council didn't care for. They entered the classroom, right away feeling the immense amounts of killing intent aimed at them. It was intimidating, but Zabuza's was much worse, so they shrugged it off, meeting up with their fellow classmates. Sasuke didn't seem concerned when Ino didn't jump him right away, but ignored her, turning his attention to the young Hyuga heiress who was hiding behind Shino. Ever since the academy he had been interested in the Hyuga but had been forbidden to interact with her on Hiashi's orders. Sasuke didn't care for those foolish fangirls that wanted him, in his mind they were all weak and not worthy of being the mother of his children. Hinata was different in his mind though, she acted like a shy and timid girl but knew better. He had grown interested in her while at the academy when he found her beating a log in the local training ground until her fists were bloody. Unlike all the other girls who would have stopped after that, Hinata didn't. She bandaged her hands, was back there again the next night doing it again, ignoring the pain it caused. She was determined, strong, kind, and beautiful, the perfect mother for future Uchiha. He would use these exams as a chance to get close to her, and if she refused him he'd take what he wanted anyway. Hiashi would be overruled by the council, and Hinata would be forced to become his wife. It was a perfect plan. Just as he was about to speak with her, the doors to the classroom were flung open. Three individuals entered, their presence catching everyone's attention. The first was a young girl with short-cut brown hair and blue eyes. She was wearing an interesting lavender jumpsuit with two strange weapons on the belt at the small of her back. The second was a tall silver-haired boy with aqua-colored eyes. He wore a long black trench-like coat with a silver chain around his neck. The last one had shoulder-length red hair and glowing blue eyes. He wore a red trench coat with black shoulder pads. Underneath was a black vest with many belts and black leather pants. On his belt was a strange sword that looked like a rapier, and in his left had a small red book with the title Loveless on the cover in gold. It was their headbands that got everyone's attention the most though, the icon for Shinra was on them. So these are the shinobi Shinra sent, they sure look different than I expected, Shino thought. These those Shinra guys. troublesome, Shikamaru thought. Those guys are so hot, much better looking than Sasuke, Timino thought. The redhead looks exotic, wonder if he single Sakura thought. They look strong, I will defeat them and prove him they're better, Sasuke thought. The three were moving slowly, moving past everyone who moved out of the way. They took a seat next to the three Sand siblings, ignoring the killing intent Gaara was spewing out. The Konoha 12 were observing them, but none seemed willing to talk to them, except for Sasuke, who was being held back by Sai and Shino. It was Hinata who made the first move, surprising her teammates and fellow classmates. Walking up to the three, she was nervously poking her fingers together, a cute trait she had developed when she was younger. Excuse me?" she asked, quietly but loud enough to be heard. Her voice had gotten the redhead's attention. Shulky and Riku ignored her, but secretly observed Naruto's reactions. "Yes?" Naruto asked as he looked up from his book, his eyes locked with hers, and Hinata felt like a fire had been lit inside her. His eyes looked so much like his, like Naruto's. "My name is Hinata Hyuga, I'd like to welcome you to the Leaf Village." She bowed slightly. Genesis smiled, closed his book and got to his feet, slightly towering over the blue-haired girl. "It's a pleasure to meet you, beautiful goddess." Genesis, he smiled, taking her hand and kissing it, Hinata's face pink with blush, but she didn't pass like she used to when she was younger. Across the room, two young genin were showing angry faces, Sasuke Uchiha and Neji Hyuga. "How dare that bitch flirt with another man? She's supposed to be my woman, the future wife of my children. I'll teach her a lesson on our wedding night to speak to other men." "What does he think he's doing? She's the heiress of the Hyuga clan and he's just a shinobi." "Well, a shinobi trained by the elite of Shinra, but still Uncle Hiashi would never approve. Then again, anyone may be better than Sasuke Uchiha." The two thought as they watched Hinata and Genesis continue to talk without interruption, until Sasuke decided to get involved. "Hey dope," he shouted, catching everyone's attention. Genesis turned from Hinata and glanced at Sasuke with a bored expression. "Can I help you?" he asked, sounding bored. "You think you're better than all of us just because you were trained by Shinra? You should respect your betters," he voiced. "You my better? My don't you sound superior, whining like a brat. If you're my better then I'd hate to meet those below me." Genesis smirked. "I am Uchiha. Respect me." Sasuke charged. He got within a feet of Genesis and swung with a kunai, not caring that Hinata was in the line of attack. In an impressive show of speed, Genesis wrapped an arm around Hinata's waist, spun her around while reaching up to grab the Uchiha's incoming arm, flipped him over and slammed a fist into his chest, sending him flying into the desks behind Shulky and Riku. "That's the Uchiha is all show after all. How weak, he's not even worth killing." Riku smiled knowing Sasuke had heard his words, those words bringing back terrible memories. "Foolish little brother, you're not even worth killing." Itachi's voice mocked him. During this, Hinata had noticed that Genesis had yet to take his arm from around her waist and blushed at the close contact, feeling the muscles of his chest as she was pressed against him. Genesis-san, would you mind?" she asked, though it was in a whisper-like voice. "Oh, forgive me, I was too focused getting rid of some trash," he voiced, removing his arm, and noticed the look of disappointment that crossed her face for a few seconds. Sasuke pulled himself out of the turned-over desks and chairs and glared at Genesis. "Who the hell do you think you are? You think you can get away with this? The council will have your head," he shouted, sounding more like a brat by the second. "I am shinobi of Shinra, the elite, and you are an obnoxious brat that whines when he can't get his way. Go sit down before you embarrass yourself and your village anymore." "Then you already have," Genesis voiced, his killing intent so strong Sasuke felt his knees buckle and lost his breath. But Sasuke, taken care of, Genesis turned back to Hinata, a smile on his feet. "Beauty and mystery is the gift of the goddess," he voiced, getting Hinata's attention. "I look forward to solving your mystery, my beautiful goddess." He smiled, getting a blush before he left to sit back down with his team. Shulky looked emotionless as Genesis took his seat between her and Riku. "Was that really needed? You could have been a little less physical," she whispered. Genesis sighed before pulling out a small vial, filled with blood. "I got a sample of her blood without being noticed, didn't I? Besides, You've felt more of me than she did." He smirked, getting a blush from the brunette. "That was impressive though, using the Uchiha's attack as a chance to obtain a blood sample without being noticed, using a needle at the small of her back where the senses are slightly more dull, was brilliant." Riku added. "Sample from Hinata Hyuga obtained. Sasuke and Neji Hyuga remain." Genesis smiled. Their conversation was ended when Ibiki, the first proctor of the exam, showed up and started the first exam, one all three of the Shinra shinobi would pass with flying colors. They didn't notice a certain snake-eyed genin from village hidden in the grass were watching them. But the first exam completed, all the hopeful genin had gathered the next day at Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death. Currently Genesis, Shulky and Riku were leaning against a fence, watching as the second exam instructor, Anko, make fun of a certain male genin with a white dog. Genesis was reading Loveless again. Shelky was monitoring everything in the area, and Riku was observing the last two targets Asuke and Niji. Last night they had been contacted by Lucrecia and informed them that trying to gather the samples in the forest was too risky with too many eyes watching. They were to gather the samples during the finals, where they would be in close contact with their targets. Unknown to even the Jonin running the exam, Team Shinra already had the 2 scrolls needed to pass the exam. Shelky, using her special invisibility skills, had snuck into the Hokage Tower and stole a pair of the scrolls. Currently their mission was to eliminate certain genin in order to manipulate the match pairings for the finals later on. Shelky would use her abilities to make her way to an old Shinra escape tunnel, where she would deliver the blood sample of Hinata to some medical drones. Genesis would spend his time doing whatever he wanted, but was told not to eliminate certain teams. Riku would seek out and eliminate the genin teams from Rain and Mist to ensure Team Shinra had a chance of meeting their targets quicker. They were given a scroll, an earth one, and led to gate 13, where they had to wait for the exam to begin. Soon an alarm rang, and the gate opened, allowing them access to the forest. After entering the forest they moved till they were sure they could be detected by the Chunin watching the gate before beginning their plan. "Alright Shelky, get going, we'll meet up later, you got your tracer on?" Genesis asked. "Yes, it'll be able to find your location within 2 miles of my location. It'll see you two later," Shelky responded as she walked off into the forest, her body fading out and becoming invisible. Shelky the transparent, I can see how she got the title, Riku voiced. Yes, something else. "Well, you better get going too, and I've got some reading to catch up on," Genesis voiced as he walked off in another direction, leaving the silver-haired youth to himself. He sighed and shook his head. "Guess he'll go have some fun too," he smiled as he vanished into a black portal of darkness. But Shelky. She couldn't understand why she felt this way. Ever since she saw Genesis get close to that Hinata girl, she felt this strange tightness in her chest. She knew it was only to get a sample of her blood, but did he have to flirt with her too? He later apologized to her and promised to make it up to her, but she still felt strange and a little angry too. Shaking her head of such thoughts, she slowed down to avoid a team of rain genin as they ran past her, not seeing her thanks to her invisibility technology. She was near the entrance to the tunnel and did not need some genin getting lucky, and noticing it, Shinra's deep ground was top secret, only Lucrecia and the top brass knew of its existence. Well, them and Vincent Valentine, but he hadn't been seen for over 200 years, but was most likely still alive thanks to the experiments performed on him by Ho-Ho. Reaching her target, she deactivated her invisibility and glared at the entrance, hidden by a cloaking device. There was a team of Konoha genin underneath a tree next to the entrance. It was that Kabuto guy and his 2 teammates. It seemed she would need to eliminate them in order to complete her objective. "Come out, we know you're there," Kabuto yelled as his teammates got to their feet. Moving slowly, she emerged from her hiding place, appearing in the clearing. "How very perspective of you, when did you notice me?" she asked in a monotone voice. "Since you arrived, I just didn't know who you were," Kabuto replied, drawing a kunai. "Impressive. To be able to sense me suggests you are not of genin or even chunin level. You are hiding your true skill level," Shelky voiced, making Kabuto narrow his eyes. "I'm afraid I can't let you live now, you know too much," he voiced, he and his teammates getting ready to attack. "You're a fool." In the span of a few seconds, Shelky had activated her laser lances, went transparent, warped behind Kabuto's teammates, and cleaved them both in half. Kabuto barely managed to avoid the blow, his kunai getting sliced as he tried to defend against the strike. Backflipping away, he couldn't stop the look on his face as he saw his teammates lie there dead, sliced across the stomach into 2 halves. He had never seen a weapon like that before, but after witnessing what it could do he knew he stood no chance against it. Shelky reappeared, her weapons deactivated and her eyes glowing with Mako. "You don't stand a chance against me," she said emotionlessly. "Shit, this is bad. I knew everything they had was superior, but I never suspected such advanced weaponry. I need to get away and inform Lord Orochimaru," he thought as he formed a hand sign and teleported away to report, leaving the girl alone with the 2 dead bodies. "Right now he knows about my abilities, he will have to be taken care of later," she thought as she entered the hidden tunnel, leaving the bodies there to rot. She found a medical drone on standby and handed it the sealed test tube with the same of Hinata's blood. She quickly left, making sure to reactivate the cloaking device before leaving to locate her teammates and continue on their original mission. Shinra Incorporated. Deep ground. Lucrecia smiled as she was received the report from a drone, so Genesis had managed to gather one of the 3 samples so quickly, she'd make sure to give him a new summoning materia. Once this assignment was completed, heading into a lab she took another tube filled with blood from a nearby fridge and placed them both in a large chamber. Turning to the computer she began inputting commands. "Begin the cloning process. I want results in 3 days," she voiced as she left, leaving an open file on the computer. It was a picture of a young woman with black hair dressed in a white t-shirt, black shorts and combat gloves. Program replica Lockhart had begun. Junin exams. Team 7. To say Orochimaru was disappointed was an understatement. He stood looking over the 3 fallen members of Team 7, and he couldn't be more disappointed. Sasuke was barely able to fight him off when he was using a mere 5% of his power. The girl had been knocked out easily, and the pale-skinned boy was just as easily dispatched. The only good thing about the attack was that Sasuke revealed his Sharingan, but he didn't have the proper training to use it effectively. He thought just because he was in Uchiha that Orochimaru would just give up after finding out. In his mind, Orochimaru believed branding Sasuke was a mistake. Even with the Sharingan, this body was barely trained and won't adapt to his training very easily, but with Itachi being too powerful and the Akatsuki protecting him, he had no way of attacking the elder Uchiha. He turned to leave. Knowing that his location may be compromised thanks to Anko and the Anbu now moving through the forest when he stopped. The redhead, Genesis, that had caught his attention during the first exam was walking below him, his head bowed, reading that book he had with him earlier. He didn't even seem to notice the Sanin's presence, which slightly pissed him off, but he didn't have time to worry about some genin. Even if he was trained by Shinra, he had to meet up with Kabuto. He leaped off. Never noticing Genesis take his hand off the hilt of his rapier. Guess he didn't want to fight, he sighed as he moved on to the 3 fallen genin. Reaching the pale skin by, he closed his book and placed in an inside pocket of his jacket. "I know you're not unconsciousness, so get up," he voiced, and Sei eyes opened. "How did you know?" he asked, sitting up. "Your heartbeat decreased when Orochimaru left the area, as did your breathing," Genesis replied as he moved over to Sakura. With his back to Sai, he couldn't see the slight glare on his face as he looked at the beaten pink-haired girl. He could remember that every single day she would call him a loser, a fool, an idiot, how she would constantly make fun of him and punch him whenever he tried to do something nice for her. Had he not had more control of his anger, he would have pulled out his rapier and stabbed her through the heart, but he just didn't care about her anymore. He had Shulky now. "Pick her up and carry her. It'll get the dumb Uchiha," he ordered as he picked Sasuke up and threw him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Spying a large tree with a hole at its base, he carried Sasuke over with Sai carried Sakura bridal style. It was getting dark now, as Sai arranged the two so they would rest comfortably with their packs as pillows before turning to Genesis. "Thank you for your assistance," he voiced. "No problem, I'm out of here," Genesis spoke as he turned to leave. "Oh, and one more thing." Next thing he knew, Sai was slammed into the tree's trunk, a fiery glowing rapier at his neck and glowing blue eyes staring into his. Genesis opened his loveless book and ripped out the last page. It turned into ink and splashed onto the ground. "Try to spy on me again, and you won't like the results," he voiced. He vanished in an explosion of fire, leaving Sai alone with his teammates. With Riku. Night had fallen. It was at this time he felt his ease with himself. With quickness he moved through the forest towards his targets, the rain team. He had already finished off the team from Hidden Mist. He didn't even have to draw his sword, which slightly disappointed him. He landed in a clearing, noticing chakra signatures all around him. It was the rain team. "Surrender your scroll, Shinra scum, and we might let you go," one of the clones yelled out as 20 copies of him appeared all around Riku in the trees. Riku smiled. This might be a challenge to some undertrained genin, but it would be no problem for him. This gave him a chance to test out his newest skill. "Clones, huh? Let's see how you deal with this." Then he spoke as an orb of black glowing materia shined on his left arm. Summoning technique. Riku slammed his hand into the ground and instantly a huge black glowing glyph appeared. 6 black portals came from the glyph and slowly figures began to rise from them. They were all of a young man with spiky black colored hair and dressed in strange clothing. In their right hand, they held a strange looking sword that looked like a key. Their green glowing eyes locked on the rain genin's clones and all got into battle stances. Shadow Sora's attack. The 3 rain genin shouted as they tried desperately to get away from the small army of Shadow Soras hunting them. It had started off easy, 6 against 20, the shadows were slow moving, and their only skill seemed to be swordsmanship as they only attacked with their strange key-shaped weapons. The rain genin clones easily dispatched them in a few moments, only to become shocked when the shadows they defeated split apart and formed 2 more copies of the spiky-haired boy. 6 became 12, 12 became 24, 24 became 48, and it never seemed to end. All the while Riku was feeding Mako into the materia on his arm to keep the shadows multiplying. An evil smirk on his face seeing his special skill in action. Soon the genin were overwhelmed and all their clones were defeated. The shadows turned their attention to them and were currently hunting them down in the forest. One of the mask-wearing genin tripped, his teammates looking on in horror as the shadows caught him and proceeded to kill him, stabbing their keyblades all over his body. "Fuck this man, let's get out of here." One of them shouted before forming a hand sign and teleporting away along with his friend. Seeing their targets gone, the shadows dispelled themselves, not leaving a trace that they were ever there. Riku dropped to one knee, the materia on his arm stopped glowing. "Damn, seems I used too much power with this skill. I'll need to rest to recharge my Mako before meeting up with the others," he voiced. "Impressive summoning," a voice called out. Stunned that he was caught off guard, he turned, his wing blade out and ready to defend himself. From a nearby tree came a young woman about 18 years old. She had one blue eye and one green eye, short-cut brown hair with a very long ponytail in the back wrapped in a red ribbon. She wore a white blouse with a strange red symbol in the center of the chest area. Blue jean shorts with two belts wrapped around them, long lace-up combat black boots went up to just below her knees, and in her hands were two handguns which were currently lowered. Around her head was a black forehead protector with a symbol for hidden mist on it. That was cool, I've never seen something like that before. She smiled as she skipped out into the clearing, just stopped just before him and kneeled down, locking eyes with him. Name's you, Nebraska, you? She smiled. For some reason Riku felt at ease with this girl, he didn't know why, but with him being so drained there wasn't much he could do if she wanted to fight him. Riku, he replied. Oh Riku. Just like my friend back in my village, she's a girl, though. She smiled as she sat down. Well, looks like you aren't going anywhere soon. That technique must have used a lot of energy, she voiced, as she leaned against the tree Riku was next to. Why are you here? Don't you want revenge for taking out your fellow teammates? He asked, knowing that he killed another team of Miss Genin earlier that day, Kuja, Seymour, and Cheyenne. Nah, they weren't my friends and were real jerks, they got what they deserved. Yuna waved him off. You're a strange one, Yuna. Riku chuckled. That's just mean, you big meanie, she pouted. But Shulky. Genesis in 1.3 miles from my position. Riku is out of range, so he must be near the tower, she voiced. She had been traveling for a while now, ignoring all the other genin that attempted to attack her and just fleeing the battles. She wasn't worried about them per se, she just felt the need to check on them, and thinking about Genesis made her chest tighten again. She shook her head. She had been spending way too much time with the redhead. Lucrecia would always get these smiles when she saw the two of them together and make little comments about Shulky needing to express more emotion or she may lose the boy to another woman. Leaping off a tree and down to the forest floor, she continued into a sprint heading towards Genesis' location. The very thought was absurd. What girl could possibly take Genesis from her? But Genesis. With a grunt he slammed into a tree, wiping the blood from his lip. He ducked as a volley of bullets struck where his head had just been. The girl was proving to be far more of a challenge than he thought. She appeared to be 17 years old with a slim but muscular body. She had short-cut light pink hair and was dressed in a white jacket with black lining, long black arm sleeves and brown leather gloves donned her arms, brown leather shorts with black leggings on her legs, black combat shoes, and a strange mecha-like sword in her hand that could change into a strange rifle-like gun. Charging Mako into his left hand, he flung it, sending multiple fireballs at the girl. In an impressive display of flexibility, the girl leaned backward, her weapon changing back into a sword, flipped and sliced all the fireballs in half. Not bad for a Shinra elite. Now let's see how you do against an Lsai, she voiced. He had heard of them. The Lsai were an experiment Shinra and another company called Cocoon tried 15 years ago. They were designed to be super soldiers like Shinra's first class, where only they didn't use Mako. They used chakra and could enhance their powers thanks to crests on their bodies. Only a handful of the infants survived the experiment and showed tremendous potential to be shinobi at a young age. The village hidden in the mist was the one that purchased the research material from Shinra after Cocoon went out of business 10 years ago. However, they only began the serious training after their new Mizukage came to power, a beautiful woman named Mei. This girl must be one of the original Lsai born back then. She fit the age and her skills were much more advanced than they were supposed to be. Lucrecia would definitely be interested in this turn of events. Name's Genesis, so what's your name, Lsai? He asked as his rapier glowed. Name's Eclair Farron, but you can call me Lightning. That for now I stop here, so see next video.